All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give our glory and praises due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of the great millstone who rule well and touch the truth. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect. Scattered abroad doing this work in truth and sincerity. I say shalom. This is just a quick hit. Lord, when this is edifying, really just going back into the last count we had, and concerning the title, and just a few accounts and examples I want to touch on through the scriptures. We can filter out through the scriptures, just to show some things and really just touching on that, just going back to the title. It's just going back into how today's society is too weak and soft, man. Today's society is too weak and soft, because we know as generations have passed and the time has passed, and the world being full with more evil, more corruption, more wicked inventions, and different spirits and algorithms or energies, you can say that this devil has put out in the earth. It's caused the world to get weaker and soft, man. Everything is more feminized, man. Everything is more soft now, man. Everything is a lot more filtered, man. Everybody's all emotional. Nobody can take the truth anymore. Nobody even could take criticism, constructive criticism. Correct judgment isn't going out. And why isn't correct judgment going out? Because the society is too soft, man. It's too weak. Again, it's being feminized, man. On a spiritual level, and on a carnal level as well, But like I say, man, Lord willing, this is edifying. There's a few scriptures I want to pick through, just to prove a few points, man. So I want to kick it off with the book of 2nd Esdras 14. So it's the 2nd Esdras 14, and I want to read verse 17. Actually, we'll pick up at 16 and read down. So this is 2nd Esdras 14 and 16. It says, "For yet greater evils than those which thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter." So the Lord is telling you, man, it's greater evils to come. It says, "For look how much the world shall be weaker through age," man. So the world has gotten weaker through age, man. The older society and the longer society goes on with the hands of the wicked, Esau, Edom, these elites, these devils, man. These wicked ass nations with their wicked ass inventions being in control. The world is going to get weaker through age, man. With the world not being ran with the correct rulers of the world, which is the elect, but ultimately Israel, man. Ran by Israelites. The tribes, and Yahweh Shai being the king. It's not under the correct order, man. It's not under the right vibration, the right spirit, so everything's gotten weaker, man. It says, "For look how much the world shall be weaker through age, so much the more shall evils increase upon them that dwell therein." So the world is going to get weaker, and the evils are going to increase. It says, "For the truth is fled far away, and leasing is hard at hand. For now haste the vision to come which thou hast seen," man. So like I said, the truth is fled far away, man. And the point I want to touch on is how it says, how much the world shall be weaker through age, And with the world being weaker through age, like it said in verse 18, and the truth is being fled far away. Because people don't want to hear the truth again, man. People can't take the truth, People can't take simply hearing, like we had two women come to camp, come by the camp, and ask what's going on. And we were telling them, we preaching about, the real Jews, and, how those over there in Israel are not the real Jews, man. How they're Jewish, those Amalekites. So like if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And Esau, she was like, the Jews, she didn't want to hear it. She was kind of, appalled. Like she just, she was in shock. She didn't want to hear it. People don't want to hear the truth. They're too weak to hear the truth, man. They don't want to hear that the Israelites are so-called black men and black women, so-called Hispanics and Native Americans of that descent, man. Cubans, Latinos, man. They don't want to hear this, They don't want to hear the truth. Because the world's too soft, man. It's too weak. People have been dulled down and pacified with lies over the years to the point where the truth it hurts, man. It kills them. And especially this word. We know, like the scriptures say, that this word is sharper than any two-edged sword, man. So ultimately, these people getting cut through the spirit because they weak as hell in the spirit, man. Why? Because Esau is in control, man. You know, Esau is that evil man, that seducing man that has everybody under the spell of being fucking weak, man. You know, the man all feminine. You know, he weak as hell. Jake soft as shit, man. You know, but portraying this image to be a damn gangster, he feminine as hell. You know, raised by his damn mama. Eve thinks she masculine the whole time. She weak as hell too, man. You know, everybody weak as hell, man. But let's go to this, man. Just because I said that, because I want to touch on that point again, because we know that the wicked is the rulership, and the spirit they're in. You know, that weak, weird, just that weak ass weird spirit that Esau in, man. It's on the that energy is going out throughout the earth and being set on the people, man. You know. Now let me just grab this. I got a few scriptures to back that up. Let's get this. 2 Timothy 3:13. You know, where it says, "But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived," man. You know, and this was, you know, going into Israel, but it's also going into Esau, man. Because Esau is that evil man, you know, ultimately, man. It says, "But evil man seducers," Esau's a seducer, man. It says, "shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived." So that's the spirit Esau is in. He's that evil man, that seducer that's waxing worse and worse, man. As his kingdom go on and prolongs, he's waxing worse and worse all the way down to his downfall, man. You know, it said deceiving and being deceived, you know. Because what, he's deceiving the minds of the people, but he's also being deceived by Yahweh Shem Shai, by the Lord, man. You know, all into his downfall, to the downfall of this kingdom. You know, but him waxing worse and worse, being that wicked man, that seducing spirit, you know, that same spirit that he's in, he you know, it's over the earth, man. You know, it's over those who, you know, whose mind he's already took captive and control. You know, also going along with the spiritual demon Satan, you know, that run up this world, man. You know, but let me grab this and Sirach real fast, just to back up that point. So this is Sirach 10 and 2, kind. Yeah, kind. We'll start at 2. It says, "As the judge of the people is himself," it says, "so are his officers, and what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein." You know, so it says, "As the judge of the people is himself," man. So are his officers, and what manner of a man that the ruler of the city. And who's that the man that's the ruler of this city? I mean, he's the ruler of this kingdom. And as such are all they that dwell therein. You know? So that, again, like it's telling you, the whoever's ruling over the city, the same people that's in that city, they're in that same manner, man. They're the same manner of people, you know. So that same manner of spirit that Esau is in, he has the world in it too, man. You know, he has the world hypnotized and tapped in to this wicked ass, you know, this wicked ass weak feminine spirit, man. You know, they don't want to do nothing but wickedness, you know, commit adultery, you know, fornication, you know, just doing weird shit, man. You know, just full of wickedness and iniquity, man. And, you know, and I'll read verse 3. It says, "An unwise king destroyeth his people, but through the prudence of them which are in authority, the city shall be inhabited." You know, and Esau is an unwise king. He destroying his people, man. What? Again, through feminism, this weak ass black culture. You know, you just throwing the people through black culture, through wicked inventions, man. You know, AI, all this damn technology, the shit he's pushing out through the music industry, the shit you know, you seeing on the internet, on these telephones, all this shit, man. You know, these different cultures, you know, the way people dress, you know, changing the changing of, I gotta be careful what I say, but, you know, just being all the way out there to change the genders, you know. Men able to go in women's bathroom, women able to go in man's bathroom, men able to cut their ride off, women able to get a ride, you know, get their tits, you know, get their tits reduced. Like, man, it's just all kind of wickedness, man. You know, wickedness and high vibration that Esau pushing out on earth. He has everybody in that same like weak ass spirit, man. And in the old modern days, this type of shit wasn't tolerated, man. It was order, you know. When the kingdom was, you know, when we had our kingdom established, you know, in righteousness, things weren't running this order, man. You know, when Yahweh Shai was on the scene, things weren't running this type of order, man. You know, people weren't as weak, man. You know, people were able to hear the truth. You know, judgment was able to be placed, righteous judgment like that, man. You know. But let's I want to grab this, man. I want to grab Isaiah Khan, you know. Because, you know, again, Esau is the reason for this South-ass kingdom, man. Ultimately because the Lord has that perverse spirit on him that he's put out into the earth, man, upon the minds of the people, you know. So this is Isaiah 19 and 14. And it reads, the Lord have mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. As staggereth in his vomit. So like you said, the Lord has mingled that perverse spirit, man, in what? In the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err, man. The Lord he mingled a perverse spirit here in Babylon, man, amongst these nations, amongst Esau, Edom, amongst the minds of the people, man. Like I said, it caused them to err in every work thereof, man. So everybody going out, everybody weak, man. They soft, they feminine, man. Because this weak ass, this beast system that Esau got set up, man. And it's only gonna get worse, man. But let's go to this, man. Let's go to let's jump to 2 Corinthians, man. Because Esau got it set up, to where, again, like I was saying earlier, people, they want to be comforted with lies, man. They don't want to hear the truth. People can't take the truth, man. Somebody will kill you, you tell them the truth, man. You walk up to a sodomite and tell them they're a sodomite and they going off, and he'll bug up on you, man. He'll want to kill you, he'll start crying, man. He'll start crying. He or she, and they'll start freaking out, man. A freak will start freaking out on you, man. Ready to get you up out of here, take you to the spirit world, man. People can't take constructive criticism. Again, people can't take righteous judgment, man. That's why, like I said, that perverse spirit has been mingled out to the earth, to where even the judgment's been perverse, man. Righteous judgment's been perverse, But let's get this in Corinthians, man. So, like, this is 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 3. I want to touch on this because, just like I was saying, man, that perverse spirit that's on Esau, he's taking captive the minds of the people, also along with the spiritual demon Satan. And that's why people can't understand the truth or get the truth. That's why people, when they hear the truth, they're offended at it, man, because they too soft and weak, man. Their spirit not able to take it in. But this is 2 Corinthians 4 and 3. It says, but if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost, on whom the God of this world have blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of a Mashiach, who is the image of the Most High, should shine unto them, man. So, like I said, our gospel is hid to them that are lost, man. They lost to the sauce, man. They lost in this damn, off that Babylon juice, man. Through that spirit of Esau, man. Like I said, through the God of this world have blinded them, man. So, and the spiritual demon Satan have blinded them, man, along with all these wicked ass adventures of Esau, man. They blinded the minds of the people, man. Let's jump from that. I want to touch on this Isaiah, going back to Isaiah. God, this. So, like Isaiah 30. And verse 10, actually. And it reads, Isaiah 30 and 10, it says, we'll say to the seers, see not, and to the prophets, prophesy not unto us right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits, man. So going back, landing back on the point of that 2 Corinthians, again, the God of this world has blocked the minds of the people, man. And just going back to how people can't take constructive criticism, man. Judgment is being perverse. So like it's saying right here in Isaiah, this the spirit of the people in, man. They to the prophets and just regular people. They say what? To the seers see not, and to the prophets prophesy not unto us right things, speak not unto us smooth things, man. Speak unto us smooth things. So like you prophesy deceit. So people want to hear those smooth things, those deceits, man. People rather hear that than the truth. People rather be comforted with lies, man. That's what everybody want to be comfortable with, man. People don't want to hear the truth, man. People don't want to hear get right, the Lord gonna kill you, man. People don't want to hear keep the commandments or the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Al-Shah will destroy you, man. People don't want to hear the Lord's gonna destroy the earth. They don't want to hear Esau is the wicked, man. He's the devil that the Bible speak of. People don't want to hear these things. Why? Because they too weak, they too soft, man. This culture of this world has been dulled down, man. So the people are so damn feminine and stuck in their way, man. And that's pretty much a couple points I want to touch on, but it's 2 accounts I want to touch on real quick. Just going back and showing how in the older world, whenever we was in our, reigning in our kingdom, how that was order and the world was more stern, man. That's a couple of accounts. I want to touch on this first account and First Kings. When we know which was Yahweh Shai reincarnated through the spirit. But King Solomon, whenever he was ruling, man, let's grab this real fast. I just went right past it twice. So this is First Kings 3, and I want to pick up at 16. Yeah. So this is First Kings 3, and now I want to pick up at. I want to kind of get to the point. Yeah, we'll go pick up at 17. We'll pick up at 16, kind. So this is First Kings 3 and 16. It says, then came there 2 women that were harlots until the king and stood before him, man. So he had 2 whorish women, man, before King Solomon. It says, and the one woman said, "Oh, my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass the 3rd day after that I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also. And we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we 2 in the house. And this woman's child died in the night because she overlaid it." So he had 2, harlots, and they was in the house to where they both had a baby, man. They both delivered a child, and one of the woman's child died overnight, man. Just breaking it down to where you can understand it for edification. And the woman telling them, "Hey, went nobody in the house but us 2. So pick it up at 19. It says, and this woman's child died in the night because she overlaid it. And she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me, while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I arose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered in the morning, behold, it was not my son, which I did bear." So she rose up to breastfeed her son, but she realized it wasn't her son, man. Because one of the women swapped the child out. So verse 22, it says, and the other woman said, "Nay, but this living is my son, and the dead is thy son." And this said, "No, but the dead is thy son, the living is my son." This they spake before the king. So they going back and forth. One woman saying, "Hey, the son that's dead, that's your son. The one that's living, that's mine." The other one saying, "No, the one that died, that's your son, but the one that's living, that's mine." So verse 23, then said the king, which is King Solomon, it says, "The one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. The other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living." And the king said, "Bring me the sword." And they brought the sword before the king. And the king said, "Divide the living child into two, and get half to one, half to the other." So King Solomon being a righteous judge, having wisdom, he asked them to bring him a sword, man. And they brought him a sword. He said, "Well, we're going to split the living child in half, and we're going to give you half of the living child and give you the other half of the living child," He was saying this rightfully so, but he understood at the time, and people hearing that, and they'll come out and tell the truth, man, which we finna get to. It says, then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. So King Solomon understood that the whoever child son is really was, she was going to speak up. If we're finna get to it, I'm kind of spoiling the precept, but she was going to speak up and tell, "Hey, well, let that child live and give it to this woman," because she'd rather see her child live than to get split in half because a disagreement, a back and forth, So like it's reading, it says, then spake the woman whose living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, "Oh, my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it." But the other said, "Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divided." So the woman whose child it wasn't, hey, she didn't care, man. She said, hey, split the child, man. Let it be neither mine or hers, but we could divide it, man. Because she was wicked. She didn't, she really didn't understand judgment, in a sense. So to where she was willing to let the child die, and saying split it and let it neither be one of hers, because her child had already died. It says, then the king answered and said, "Give her the living child, and no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof." And all Israel heard the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of the Most High was in him to do judgment, man. So back in the day, it was order, man. People wasn't weak. People wasn't crying. People wasn't mourning. "Oh, man, King Solomon, you wrong, man. Why you gonna split the baby in half?" They weren't casting stones. They weren't raising hell. They understood judgment, man. People wasn't weak. And even the women, man. The women wasn't weak. The women wasn't even, going out speaking before the king, saying things they ought to not to say, man. People understood judgment, man. It wasn't weak, man. People wasn't soft, But just another point I want to touch on with Nehemiah, man. Because if you know any stories about Nehemiah, Nehemiah stood on business for the Lord, man. You know, he was stern for Yahweh Shem Yahushua, you know. But I'm going to pick up at verse 19. I'm going to read down a little bit. So real fast, this is Nehemiah 13, picking up at 19. And it reads, it says, and it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I command that the gates should be shut and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set eyed at the gates that there should no burden be brought in on the Sabbath. So the merchants and sellers out of the kind of war lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them and said unto them, why lodge ye about the wall? If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth came there no more on the Sabbath, man. You know? So you had the merchants trying to come in on the Sabbath. They were trying to sell, buy, and sell on the Sabbath, man. And Nehemiah wasn't going for it, man. You know, to the point where he set up on the gates at Jerusalem, to where if they come in, and if you come in here and y'all try to do that on the Sabbath, I'm gonna lay hands on you, man. You know, because he was a prophet, he was a servant of the Lord, man. You know, he was about his father's business, man. You know, he wasn't on no weak, he wasn't on no soft shit. And those merchants who heard it, they wasn't on no feminine, soft shit, man. You know, they took the rebuke, man. They understood judgment, man. They understood, hey, he gonna lay hands on me. Hey, if I do this again, man, they didn't buckle, man. But just continuing on, it says, and I commanded the Levites that they should cleanse themselves and that they should come and keep the gates to sanctify the Sabbath day. Remember me, O my God, concerning this also, and spare me according to the greatness of thy mercies. In verse 23, picking up, I want to grab this quick point too. It says, in those days also I saw our Jews that had married wives of Ashdod and of Ammon and of Moab. So there was certain Jews that had married different wives outside of the nation, man. It says, and their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people, So you had these children because they was by other women of the nation, and they couldn't speak Hebrew, man. It says they could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. It says, and I contended with them and cursed them and smote certain of them and plucked off their hair and made them swear by the Most High, saying, ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take their daughters unto your sons and for yourselves, man. So Nehemiah laid hands on them, man. He said, I contended with them, man. He fought them and he cursed them. He said, I smote certain of them and plucked off their hair, man. Hey, so he smote them, man. In other words, he beat their ass, man. He even pulled some of their hair out, man. And he also made them swear by Yahweh Shem Yahushua, and that they wouldn't give his daughters unto their sons, man. Because they constantly went off, man. They constantly went off by what? By marrying other wives, and then what? Now their children couldn't speak the pure language, man. They didn't have a pure tongue of speaking the Hebrew, man. And just like he was going to, and that was what King Solomon went off on, by marrying other wives, man. That was his sin that he fell off on, man. So Nehemiah was about keeping the commandments. He was about starting his father's business. But the point being, just to show you, back in the day, the world wasn't soft, man. People could understand, they could take judgment, man. So much to the point where righteous judgment was going out, even if you had to lay hands on people, man. Even if you had to smoke someone and pull their hair out, and make them swear by Yahweh Shem Yahushua, righteous judgment went out, man. These are things that were going on. Now you don't have that, man. You have judgment being perverse. Again, people can't take constructive criticism, man. People don't want to hear the truth, People, you can't tell somebody they correct judgment without them getting offended, man. You can't tell somebody their correct nationality without them being offended, man. People take offense at these things, man. That's why the Lord said, if we paraphrase, woe into the world because of offenses, man. Well, that pretty much touches on the point and wraps us up, the few points and the counts I wanted to touch on just concerning, again, how today's society has gotten so weak, in South, man. This is just bouncing back off the old camp title that we had this last past week, and brothers want to check that out. You go to the Keepers of Sheep page, the main page, and watch that. It was live screen on the brother page, man. But Lord, when this is edifying, I'm gonna close out with that. Again, giving our praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Kakodash. Double honor to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, rule well. Again, peace and salutations to the whole for elect scattered abroad, those record truth and sincerity. Until next time, shalom.